What's going on, my good people? It's your man, KD Wilson here, back just to check in with you. Look, we had an amazing time together recently. I wanted to make sure I followed up, not only to give you, a couple different points I want you to take with you as far as leadership is concerned, but also when it comes down to some of the conversation that we had. I mean, now, obviously, we got into some pretty deep waters a couple times, and there are definitely some other times when we were able to laugh and have a good time. But look, I want to make sure, again, that we are able to not only tackle some of the things that maybe we couldn't get to within the time that we had together, and also a few added pieces. So give me a second to share my screen, and I got you covered. I hope everybody's doing amazing, as you should be. And let's see here. Let's skip past those and go boom here. Leadership, y'all. We talked about what it means to be first generation. We talked about what it means to understand self. We talked about what it means to have a vision and to move forward in life. But one of the things that we have to make sure that we are holding on to is leadership as well. And leadership, as we mentioned, is not just something that you do for other people. Leadership is something that starts with you. So when we look at this picture here, as again, some of us might have gone through this, some of us hadn't. When we look at this picture, we see a pawn. And not only do we see a pawn, but we see a pawn with a crown on it. Now, here's something to keep in mind. On the chessboard, the pawn is typically the piece that's considered expendable. Nobody really cares when a pawn gets jumped, gets moved, gets missing. But here's a very interesting point I want you to consider. When the pawn is the only piece left on the board, is it so insignificant? Is it still expendable? Absolutely not. And more so, how about this point? When the pawn gets to the other side of the board, it levels up. It gets promoted. It becomes something different. And not just something different, but better than those already in that role. Let me break it down for you. Think of it like this. A pawn is considered less than. It's considered small. It's considered irrelevant almost, or sacrificial, if you will. I'll put my pawns out there first. They'll get jumped and beat up and no big deal. So I can move my queen, my king, my rook, my bishop. But when a pawn gets to the other side of the board, it can become pretty much anything except for the king, if I'm not mistaken. What better leader would you have than one that has started out small and become something big, rather than somebody that was born into the position? A queen born as a queen is already a queen. But a pawn that becomes a queen understands the heart of the pawn and now is able to assume a role to help those that it already understands. You might not be in the position you want to be in right now. Maybe you feel like a pawn in your life. Maybe you feel like COVID and financial situations and school and work and family is just moving you all around the board. Get to the other side. Y'all, if and when you get to the other side of that board, whether it's getting your diploma, whether it's getting that new job, whether it's starting that new relationship, whether it's just having a better sense of mental health, whatever it might be, whatever your board may be in life, get to the other side. Because when you get to the other side of that board, y'all, you level up. You're automatically promoted. And nobody can tell you that you haven't been through what you've been through. And most importantly, nobody can tell you that you have not earned what you now have. So let's start with that point right there. Leaders care. I want to make sure you understand that self-doubt is cancerous. It's something that creeps in, it starts small, and it expands and gets big. So take some time to consider what self-doubt, what thought comes to mind for you that keeps you held up, locked up, and begin to battle against that thing. Leadership demands time management, okay? I asked the question, how are these numbers different and yet the same? 24, 1440, 86, 400. Very simple. They're all increments of time. They're 24 hours in a day, 1,440 minutes, 86,400 seconds. We all get the same amount of time. It's what you do with that time, y'all, that either causes you to succeed, stay where you are, or fall behind. We can always make excuses as to why something didn't go our way. What we cannot do is complain that somebody has more time than us. They don't. They might have more obligations within the 24-hour period. Absolutely. They might have more obstacles and challenges in the communities that they live in. Absolutely. But in the end, we all have the same amount of time in a day. So I need you to make sure that you are maximizing, utilizing every hour that you have. And check this out. There's nothing wrong with having hours and time set aside to rest, set aside to decompress, set aside to just chill and just be. But make sure that when you're charged up, that next hour you hit, you're going for it. I need you getting after what you're going for, because you can only do two things with time, you all: invest it or waste it. Okay? You can't hold on to it. You can't rewind it. You can't give it to anybody else. You either invest time or you waste it. Choose wisely. And make sure you understand, if you need to, keep an actual physical log of what you spend your time on. Time is what? The currency of life. But when you spend it, you can't get it back. So whatever you're utilizing your time for, make sure you're going to get it and a return on interest. Make sure you're going to return on your investment. If you're investing into something, be it school, be it relationships, be it self, make sure you're getting something back that's actually worth the time you spent on it. Leadership requires active listening. What I want you to do is, because you probably don't have somebody beside you, consider something you need to stop wasting time on. Now, if we were together, I would have you actually interview somebody else and talk to them. Again, as some of us did, maybe some of us didn't get a chance to get to that exercise. But what I want you to do is to think about what you need to stop wasting time on. Then ask yourself the question, what happens if I don't change? And once you figure that out, or better yet, if you cannot figure that out, I want you to move on and ask somebody, share it with somebody. Hey, brother, sister, friend, cousin, anybody that you trust, anyone that has your best interest in mind. Can I share something with you? I feel like I'm wasting time on this. Can you help me process some practical steps to overcome this obstacle? Right? Make sense? Simple enough? Awesome. Leaders know what and why. We talked about this, again, for some of us, and for some of us is new information. What happened here in March of 1965, most of you have probably seen the movie, heard of the movie, or at least heard of the time in Selma. There was a movie made after it where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was marching across the bridge. And this particular time that I'm talking about, it was Mr. John Lewis, the late John Lewis, who actually marched a group of individuals, citizens, most of them looking very much like myself, being African-American or Black. And they were marching usually in pairs on the sidewalk, breaking no rules. They were simply trying to get across a bridge. Now, this is not meant to speak down of our first responders. As many of you know, I was a first responder myself. But in 1965, the standard was terrible. In 1965, the standard of being a servant was not truly what it is, and what it has at least began to shift into today. Now, clearly, we still have some issues and challenges that we need to work out, but for all intents and purposes, understand the example here. When you look at these pictures, you all, you see in the middle, that's actually John Lewis. That's one of Dr. King's best friends at the time. He led those people across that bridge. And most of you would probably ask the question, why? Like, why in the world would I look at that top picture and see what's waiting for me? Why would I still go across that bridge? You look at the picture at the very bottom, there's a lady on her side, and be mindful, you all, not to laugh or turn away. At least 14 people died that day. fighting, marching, walking peacefully to get to the other side of the bridge to continue on in the name of equality and justice. They simply wanted to be recognized as people. They wanted to be seen as valuable, as worthwhile, not even in the eyes of those that oppress them, but in the country as a whole, that they were recognized as people and not just people of color. They were fighting for something bigger than themselves. And I would ask you the question, what would drive someone to cross that bridge knowing that you might physically die? In the end, it came to mind for me that they saw something bigger than themselves. They knew that if they were able to get to the other side of that bridge, there would be an opportunity to shift and change things for generations that would come behind them. They knew what they were experiencing in the 1960s, and they knew 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, 2000s were coming. And if we can just get to the other side of this bridge, y'all, we can open a door that cannot be shut for those that are coming behind us. I am the result and the reward of the investment of time, of life, of blood, of sweat, of tears, of courage that they exemplified on this day. You are the reward for their diligence to show society that there were still tragedies and travesties that were happening to people of color. We're still facing different challenges today, but why is this relevant, you all? Because leadership led them across that bridge. Each and every person that decided to show up that day and to go in the face of fear, in the face of pain, in the face of uncertainty, they were a leader in and into themselves. But most importantly, they were leaders for those of us that would follow behind in their footsteps. I'm able to look at their sacrifice. You are able to look at their sacrifice and say, if they went knowing what might happen, then surely I can stand for something that wouldn't cost me as much. At bare minimum, we can stand for something that wouldn't cost us as much. And for those of us that would have the tenacity, the courage to step into the face of uncertainty, to step into the face of fog, to step into the face of possibly death in the name of something great, allow me to cheer you on. Allow me to tell you that you are a leader worth following. Because John Lewis understood that a strong leader had to show their followers the benefit of staying in the movement. On that day, he had to exemplify courage. He had to be empathetic. He had to know that there were people on the fence that wanted to go but didn't want to go. What leadership qualities did he have to exemplify? What did he have to show and demonstrate that day? He had to show love. He had to show compassion. He had to be peaceful, but he had to be assertive. He had to be determined. He had to be aware. He had to have a purpose, a vision. He had to have a strategy. He had to have action built inside of his soul. But he had to have a reason. When a leader knows why they're doing what they're doing and they're willing to put something on the line to get after it, they're very difficult to stop. What is it that's keeping you moving? And do you have the courage to bet on yourself? Katie, I don't see myself as a leader. Why not? Well, I'm an introvert. I keep to myself. That has nothing to do with being a leader at all. Leadership is not about titles. Leadership is not about stepping in front of a crowd. Leadership is not about having the loudest voice. Leadership is just as much a part of how you think and what you feel in your heart and your soul, how you act, how you move, how you function, as it is being able to step in front of a microphone and give a great speech, to move and compel people to do something great. Sometimes leadership is best seen from the back. Sometimes the people in the lowest roles in a place are the ones that lead the best. Sometimes it's the people that are behind closed doors doing things that no one else knows about that makes them an even better leader than the one standing up in front of the crowd. But you have to be willing to bet on yourself. You have to know why you're doing what you're doing. You have to be able to say, I don't need somebody else to affirm me and tell me that I'm a leader in order for me to become a leader, because leadership has nothing to do with promotion and title. You can be 6 years old, 10 years old, 30 years old, 45 years old and be a leader. You can be 100 years old. It has nothing to do with age or gender or education or qualification. Leadership has everything to do with what's in your heart, what's in your mind, what's backing you, what's pushing you, and do you have what it takes to step up when something or someone's needed? That's leadership, right? And that's you. They lead by example of commitment. I asked this question, why is this called 409? The answer is very simple. 408 times the people that created this formula got it wrong. On the 409th time, they got it right. We may not know what you've experienced in your life. We may not know the hardships you might have faced. We may not know what's happening to you behind closed doors, but we see your 409. We see you shining, even when you might feel weakened. We see you standing up and showing up, even when you feel like you are locked down. I'm just here to encourage you that your 408 was not in vain. We see your 409. That takes commitment. It takes determination. And it takes you understanding that it has absolutely nothing to do with your feelings. Commitment is not about feelings. It's, again, what's at stake? What's in front of me? What's behind me? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Do I see the value in this thing? If so, I'm going to lock myself, anchor myself down to this thing and go forward. And that's why I asked the question, why haven't you quit yet? Why haven't you given up? Katie, what do you mean, why haven't I given up? Every single person has an opportunity, has a reason, has an excuse as to why we could have, should have quit. Why haven't you? Make sure you know what that reason is, because that thing will preserve you and keep you when times get hard. Lastly, leaders take ownership of their efforts. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to take a second and I want you to think about what a good leader is. I want you to think about what kind of a leader would you want to be in front of you? If you were on that bridge in Selma and you weren't sure about getting across that bridge, you saw what was on the other side, you knew what was coming. What kind of a leader would you need to compel you, to encourage you, empower you to get across that bridge? That's the question I'm asking. What qualities would you need to see in them? Would it be the passion in their eyes? Would it be the tone of their voice? Would it be the courage and strength in their bones? Like, what would it be? And when you figure that thing out, I want you to answer this last question. What do you need to do in order to become the leader you just described? What do you need to do to become the leader that you just described? Why is that relevant? Because we're all leaders. Because every single one of us has the ability, the passion, and the drive to do something phenomenal. But I need you to know that you were born on purpose, with purpose, and for a purpose. Go and lead today, you all, and act like it. It's your man, KD Wilson. Hit me up, man, anytime. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, email. I'm there. I'm with you. I'm for you. And listen, man, if you got people in your corner, get after it, but go make it happen. I'll talk to you soon. Peace.